Welcome to Podula Rasa. I'm David Blank.
And I'm Jim Esch.
This is a podcast about finding something in nothing.
So what did you want to talk about for show? What are we up to? Show 13?
I think we're on 13.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've stalled a little bit. Maybe it's because I'm just really busy.
One thing I thought we could do is maybe read some listener mail.
Sure.
Jessica Goodfellow Bueno, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Jessica, I knew in high school. We had a computer class together. Jessica was class of 83, I guess. We were 82, right? So I think she was a year behind us.
Okay.
Jessica sent in this really nice note about Thom Williams, and she has like some really cool tie-ins with him. So I'll just read you some of what she shared. I just listened to your podcast about Thom Williams. My family moved from Portland, Oregon to Newtown Square when I was in the first grade, and we moved in next door to Thom and his family. We used to go over to their house for tea, and we always got Christmas gifts from them. They knew I was interested in poetry even then. So one year when I was still in elementary school, I was given a signed copy of Thom's chapbook. It was called The Collected Poetry of Thomas Beverly Williams. Beverly? I asked him. Yeah, he said, and explained that he used it because Thom Williams was such a common name. Thom also had a weekly radio show at that time. I'd like to know more about that.
I've never heard of that other than this.
Yeah, he had a weekly radio show at that time, something local, something about poetry, I think. I never heard it, but it was back when I was still in elementary school. Some of the poems in the chapbook were from a radio play that Thom had written. I don't know if that had anything to do with the radio show or not. I used to go over to Thom and Kathy's for my piano lesson every week. Their downstairs apartment was pretty small, and Kathy would send Thom outside if he was home. In the summertime, Thom used to sit in the backyard and play the guitar. Whenever he saw me, he'd say, "There's a great song by the Allman Brothers called Jessica. Let me play it for you." He'd play a bit on his guitar, or he'd go inside and turn his music on really loud so I could hear it in the yard. I was always disappointed that there weren't any words to the song. When he would play it for me, I'd be so mortified because he would sit and stare at me the whole time he was playing. And that is a long song. Kathy would tell him I'd had enough, and he'd say, "Had enough, Jessica?" And I never knew what to say to that. I was a little kid, unused to having so much attention fixed on me by an adult. It was disconcerting, the true attention. There was a tree between our houses that locusts would always leave their exoskeletons on. And for some reason, as a kid, that fascinated me. So I would always pick them off and save them in a box. Thom told me he used to always hang out at the tree and look at the locust shells too. And he'd tell me when there were new ones for me to go pick. He'd always tell me to carry on when he'd see me doing weird kid stuff. I had Thom for creative writing at the high school too. My first day at the high school, I ran into Thom in the hallways and he said, "Hey, Jessica." And I said, "Hey, Thom." And then I was horrified that I'd called a teacher by his first name. And Thom told me to keep on doing that it would be weird if I called him Mr. Williams. So after that, I just never addressed him by name at school. When I had him for creative writing, we did found poetry one week. And I remember for my assignment, I turned in a found poem called Fidelity. It was just 2 lines, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He asked me where I'd found it, and I told him it was from an envelope from Fidelity Bank, and he loved that. That just really pleased him for some reason. I also wrote a really dark haiku for him, and he asked to see me one-on-one and asked me what the poem was about. I told him and explained that the main bloody image came from a dream, and he said something about dream images being far out. But did I have any thoughts about hurting myself? No, I said, and I didn't. And he said everything was cool. He was just glad he didn't need to have a talk with my parents. I remember the poem that concerned him even now. I thought it was pretty edgy at the time and didn't suppose it would alarm anyone, though I'd now be concerned if a student handed it in to me. Plus, Thom knew my family, so he may have felt a little more responsible for me than maybe for the average student. I'm so grateful now that he came to me with his concern rather than going to my parents or a guidance counselor. He just handled teenagers and their angst so beautifully. The important thing about Thom for me was that he was a poet. Being a poet was a thing that you could do in life. I learned that from him and from his family's pride in his poetry. I had started writing poetry before I could write, telling my mom that I had a poem for her to write down. I don't know why or how, but I always knew to write poetry all my life. But I didn't know it was something you could show people, something that you could put out there in the world, as opposed to being something you kept to yourself privately. Thom gave me that. And thanks, Jessica, for sharing those memories.
That's awesome.
She sends that all the way from Japan.
Well, so she went from Oregon to Pennsylvania to Japan, and going from Pennsylvania to Oregon, I'd like to read the first message that I got from Lauren Allen, who's the one who did the video, and then I'd like to play something. Hopefully it plays. If not, I'll send it to you and we can digitize it somehow. So she wrote to me after she had listened to the podcast, and she said, I don't think I had written to her, but she said, I didn't realize you were one of the guys on the TWill podcast until I tuned in. I've got to say, listening to you guys reminisce about him is so touching and really brings me back. He touched so many lives. And so we've been in touch a little bit since then, and she's been affected by the fires that have been happening out in Oregon and California. So a shout out to you, Lauren. Hope you're doing well.
Hope all is well. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I want to try playing this over, just playing it and see how it sounds. But this is an old video of Thom rapping Baby Albert's Conditioning.
Baby Albert's conditioning. They dropped him on his head. Why ain't he dead? He was cool. He didn't cry. He was the toughest baby in Broomtown. That's no lie. The little guy can throw down. Hold it under. He won't drown. Greener than Gumby. Riding in his Humvee. He was the deafest on the block. His Glock's cocked. If you set him off, he's going to bust your block off. He's going to get you with his sawed off. He hit that flow. He made that dough. He's going to get mo. You know, I'm with that, yo. He's a preschool Mac with all that wiggity whack. That's a natural fact. Better watch him back, yo. He's dressing fly for this lullaby. Now he wants a piece of pie, baby. It's conditioning. He's a baller. He makes all his threes sick like disease. You don't want none of these. All the shorties and greenies. The 5-0 bustin'. Can't get through customs. Now ain't that something? Baby Albert.
That's it. I don't know if it's something that he wrote or what it is, but she just sent that to me. She said, okay, she had a video somewhere of him performing a rap he wrote called Baby Albert's Conditioning. And she was just trying to find it. So she found it, she forwarded it.
Thank you, Lauren, for that Rules to Live By video too. I mean, that was her work, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That is priceless.
Oh, absolutely. I forward that to my students at my classes at Southern New Hampshire and other places. I was thinking I'd like to read a poem of his that Meg suggests. Like when she sent me the book, she said, you got to check out this one poem, The Afterthoughts of God in Absentia. And so I'd like to read that for her. So Afterthoughts of God in Absentia. Look closely. There is more than a galaxy in each eye. Iris colors, earth, and sea tones have the gift of reflection. I meant and began the world to make sense, for each square foot of soil to be a dictionary, for boulders to be strung in an ice age abacus, for the sun and moon to be local deities. Creation was not for man. It was the way I passed a lonely afternoon at a great height. The wise men who saw shadows in the wood and called them devils misread my smudges on an unfinished work. To be honest, the project began to bore me. There is a tedium to omnipotence. One tends to anticipate oneself ad infinitum. The echo amplifies in circles too wide, and the loneliness remained. Now I am long gone to where light years are yesterday, and prayers blunted at the heliopause cannot follow. But look closely in the unexpected cool shade. There are wild raspberries fallen beneath the tiger lilies. I love that.
I love that last image.
Yeah. It's like God wrote a haiku.
Yeah.
Shout out to Thom and Absentia. The first time I read it, I read it and I smiled, and then I read it out loud to hear myself read it. And I liked it more. So now when I read it in my basement lair, there's no one else besides the cat to hear it. I read it out loud.
I have another letter from a listener I can share. This is from Nikki Di Gregorio, who writes to Padula Rasa. Hi, a friend of mine relayed a link to your podcast about Thom, and I wanted to contribute some fragments to the larger constellation that you're illustrating for the world. Thom was my teacher in 10th grade at Marple Newtown High School. I did not enjoy my time at Marple Newtown. In fact, I have not really enjoyed much since I was 12. But I will say that Thom played a pivotal role in ensuring that I graduated. I was truant for much of my high school experience. I absolutely hated being there for a variety of reasons. Then came Thom. He told me to be a writer, which I ultimately did not end up doing, but I did pursue education further. Thom helped me when I couldn't recognize that I needed help or that I wanted help. He was a listener, a friend, and someone who would take the time after school hours ended to play chess and help me process the bullshit that was the day. He encouraged me to question things in a way that allowed me to see through and past them instead of letting them chip away at me. I graduated from Marple Newtown High School in 2001. Now I'm 37 and am an associate professor at a large public university outside of Savannah. Ironically, I ended up participating in the system too, but now that I am in it, I can help the stragglers navigate it. Thom was a very unique human being, and the fact that he influenced so many people in so many ways is no surprise to me. I wish there were a better way for me to tell him thanks, but this will have to do. And that comes from Nikki Di Gregorio, PhD and associate professor at the School of Human Ecology at Georgia Southern University. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. Wonderful letter.
What a great story. You go from a truant to now you're a professor.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you don't count people out when they're in high school. And Thom had this appeal. I keep coming back to that. Across the spectrum.
Absolutely. I'd like to read a note from Colette Keeney, who was a student, one of the last students of Thom's. She writes, Larissa Friedman, a teacher who I have kept in touch with over the last 10 years, sent me your podcast and told me to reach out. I was the last graduating class that had the pleasure to be taught by TWill. To this day, referred to a Price's checklist that he emailed to me over the summer after my senior year. I now teach middle school language arts and hope to be half the inspiration and legend he was. I have many artifacts from my time spent with him that I would love to share. A birthday book he made for me, an original poem, and images of his classroom. I also still have his office phone number saved to my phone. I feel like that is just sentimental to me personally, as during the 2008-9 year he was taking a lot of sick days, and would call me in the morning to make sure I had an early dismissal note prepared, as I had his class for the entire second half of the day and didn't want me giving a substitute a hard time. I could not talk about high school without talking about Thom Williams. It's amazing the impact he has had to so many people in so many ways. He did it better. Thank you, Colette.
Maybe she can send us images of his classroom too. We can follow up with.
That would be terrific. Yeah, Colette, if you're listening, please do follow up with those images or the original poem. Or if you'd like to read the poem on the podcast, that'd be great too.
And we can share the images on the website.
Yes.
I'd like to read one last letter, and this was a card that came by good old U.S. mail, and it was sent in from my friend Tina in Malvern, who is also a listener to the podcast, and she sent this along with a lovely gift. Thank you, Tina. I'll quote a little bit from her note because I think this is of interest to our audience and it relates to a lot of the things that we've been talking about over the past number of episodes. She writes, "Last December, after contemplating goals for the coming year, I chose the word balance as my focus for 2020. Little did I know. Seriously, in spite of all that's happening, I feel more balanced than I had over the past decade. Seems like a miracle. Meditation has been the key to reconnecting with my inner wisdom. I've been relearning to trust myself and my ability to deal with anxiety, insomnia, everyday interactions and activities. That I could find happiness and contentment while many lack that luxury is something I don't take for granted. I've been finding small ways to practice generosity and acts of kindness towards those who are struggling. Hope all is well. I've been enjoying all of your creative efforts. Love, Tina." Tina, thank you so much for the card and the gift. And I've been wanting to talk to you about meditation ever since we did the shows a while back on meditation. So it's great to hear that update from you.
What's this week's oblique strategy?
This week's random oblique strategy is make a sudden, destructive, unpredictable action. Incorporate. Thank you, Brian Eno. Which actually seems very appropriate for what we're doing here today. It's just like this whole podcast.
It sounds like a normal day of teaching for me.
Right. So there you have it.
We'd like to thank all of you who sent in letters, and we were happy to read them this week. Please do leave more feedback if you follow the show. Send email to padularasa@gmail.com. You can go to padularasa.com to check out the website and any extra content we post there. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, go to anchor.fm or subscribe through your favorite podcasting application. Thanks as always for listening, and we hope to be back very, very soon.